Hi, welcome to my second video. This was recorded exactly instantly right after the first one, since it's kind of like the only available time where I can actually record. So my voice is kind of raw right now, so ignore it because I haven't drank any water yet. I drink something right now. Anyways, this is me. The Inside Scoop, Part 2 of Media Storm. Well, it's a series called Media Storm, written by I Love Myths 2003. Check them out. I'll probably leave a link in the description. I'll also copy paste the summary because I'm lazy to type. Please cut me some slack. I need to design a whole ass house for school. Anyways, and here's the summary. Inspired by the whole Aldera fiasco, Shouto Todoroki makes his debut as a blogger to expose his dad, the Todoroki brothers bond as they take down their sperm donor. The news played in the background, but Shouto couldn't help but feel strangely attached to the broadcast. The same story was running across multiple news sites. The horror of the abuse of children at the hands of quirkish educators and their peers had been a headliner for the past few weeks. The video evidence had surfaced online. There was no denying the atrocities that had been committed. Despite the terrible background of what happened, the story had left Shouto wishful. Videotaping. The student involved had gotten help for themselves by recording evidence and exposing it somewhere it could not be covered up. It was so different from the many adults that had told him when he was a child that the great endeavor would never stoop to abusing his wife and kids. The student had been heard, the public had listened, and they had retaliated. Shouto wondered if he could do something like that, get help for his mother and siblings by documenting the monster endeavor was behind closed doors. The question swirled in Shouto's mind for the next week. The possibility was begging him to take a chance, try again to find safety for himself and his family, to avenge Toya's death at the hands of their father's mistreatment. He could be the hero he wanted to be, the hero that saved others from the hidden villains, and all without using his father's fire, without using any quirk at all. A smile slowly grew on his face. He needed a camera and a computer. As it turns out, getting a computer and camera wasn't that difficult. As terrible of a father Endeavor was, he still gave Shouto a lot of allowance whenever he was allowed to leave the house. With the saved up money, Shouto was never allowed out of the house much. He was able to buy a pretty advanced camera and computer set. When he returned home with his plans to out his father, the house was empty barring Natsu, who decided to stay for the weekend upon Fuyumi's request. Not knowing how to actually set up a camera or even a computer, Shouto made his way to Natsu's room for help. Typically, he wasn't allowed to visit this area of the house. The rule had been enforced as long as Shouto could remember, but as he grew up and rebelled against his father, he had begun to visit his siblings more. Of course, Natsuo was all too willing to help Shouto in his little disobediences, hiding the evidence from their father and taking pleasure from knowing that Endeavor couldn't truly control either of them, no matter how many times he claimed he did. Natsuo. Shouto greeted his brother from the hallway. Hey, Candy Gang. His brother acknowledged as Shouto grimaced at the nickname. His brother had always thought that his hair resembled the Swede and made it a point to make sure Shouto never forgot that. I need your help with something. That got Natsuo's attention. Oh? Is it something against Endeavor again? What do you need this time? Are you finally agreeing to put hair remover in his shampoo? He'll definitely look like a Disney villain. No. He cut his brother off from his ramblings. Whilst it would be funny to see Endeavor lose all his hair and substitute it with flames like a certain Disney villain, Shouto had better plans. Have you seen the news story about Aldera Middle School? He asked his brother. Yeah? I mean, the case is everywhere. You'd have to live under a rock to not know about it. Why? The confusion was evident, as not in Natsu's voice, as he spoke, and Shouto couldn't help the sly grin that crept up on his face. Shouto, that smile tells me you're planning something devious. Shouto looked up at his brother, and he could see the wariness shining in Natsu's eyes. He probably looked like a villain planning a crime right now, and it wasn't too far off the mark. He was planning something. The downfall of Endeavor. I am. He agreed with Natsu as the statement seemed to transfer. I'm in. Natsuo spoke without pausing to consider that what the plan would entail, and Shouto could feel warmth blossoming in his chest as he and his brother exchanged conspiratory looks. Anyone who looked at them without knowing what they were talking about would think that these two brothers were just planning a prank on their dear old dad. And in a way, they wouldn't be wrong. They were planning something for Endeavor, but it wouldn't be a prank. Pranks were light-hearted, fun. They meant business. So, what do you need me to do, Shouto? Natsu asked, as Shouto pulled out of his bag of purchases. I'm planning on replicating that little social experiment the Aldera student did. I need to record everything that happens, as well as some first-hand accounts from Mom and the other people so that Endeavor is properly persecuted. It needs to be undeniable truth, or else his lawyers would just push everything down again. Shouldn't explain as not so sad, focusing on Shouto's plan. After a long moment, with Natsu staring at him silently, Shouto's brother finally spoke. I see. Okay, this is how we should do it. Pulling out the camera from Shouto's bag, Natsu counted a large videotape as well as the 5 mini security cameras that Shouto had bought. We need the videotape for the interviews, and putting them in plain sight is just asking for Endeavor to find out. You need to hide this after I set it up, he said matter-of-factly as Shouto nodded his agreement. I understand, he said as Natsuo continued. Now, you have 5 mini cameras. We need to plant these in places where they can capture Endeavor at his worst. So you have to prove for the video. I'd recommend putting 2 in the dojo. Make sure that they can catch everything in that room. You should put another one in the dining room. The old man talks about his plans for you a lot there. Put one in your room just in case he confronts you there. And another outside for when you have outdoor training. Natsuo tried to think of the places where Endeavor was most likely to mess up and reveal details of the quirk marriage and the abuse. There was just one more place that needed to be filmed. Toya's altar. Natsuo steeled himself to film that part himself. He couldn't expect Shouto to be able to do everything whilst under the eyes of their father. He had to help out too. The two of them had managed to place all the cameras in hidden spots all over the house before Endeavor had gone home. Fuyumi had returned a little later. Apparently, it was due to the vast amount of marking she had to do for her students. Natsuo cringed. He was not jealous of that. He was grateful that Fuyumi had arrived home late today. As much as he cared for his sister, he was sure about her reaction to what he and Shouto were planning. Fuyumi was kind, too kind. She was too forgiving for their father's crimes, despite the abuse he had pulled them all through. She was too willing to pretend that they could be a normal family when the Endeavor had already broken things beyond repair. In her fantasy world, Endeavor could change. their mother would be able to return from the hospital Aldera had forced her into, and they'd be able to heal. Sometimes Natsu really resented the fact Fujimi could ignore everything that happened so easily. He couldn't move on. How could he when Toya wasn't with him anymore? How could he move on when he knew his big brother was a casualty for their perfect family? No, Fuyumi couldn't be told. She shouldn't be told until they finished gathering evidence. Natsuo picked up the camera that Shouto had bought. They would need to talk to Mom. The hospital their mom was trapped in was too white, too clean. The smell of antiseptic in the air burned at their nostrils as Shouto and Natsuo went to visit her. Her clothes were muted, and they couldn't help but think it was fitting. Her kindness and compassion were muted in her life with Endeavor. He sapped the fight and passion from her. The clothes almost seemed to swamp her frame, making her look even weaker as she sat by the window, a shadow of the woman she once been. When the door opened, she turned to face them. Natsuo could see the shock on her face, along with the tears as she greeted them. Hello, Shouto, Natsuo. Long time no see. When they had told her about their plans to expose Endeavor, Ray didn't know what to think. Part of her was ashamed that her family troubles would be aired for the world to see. But another part of her knew that this is the only way they'd be able to see real change happen. She knew her quick marriage wasn't exactly legal, but NG had the support of the HPSC when he had forced her to sign the marriage documents. They'd been equally enthused at the notion of a strong hero legacy and thus allowed the match, encouraged it even. If they went through the normal procedures to try to expose NG, the HPSC would never allow for it to happen. They'd call her mad again and lock her in an even more secure hospital. Frey was about to voice her doubts when she made eye contact with her sons. There was a determination radiating off both of them. Natsu, who had been so unsure of himself as a child, was standing tall and afraid of what he had to do, whilst Ray's little Shouto, was looking at her with hope in his eyes. Ray knew that Shouto had been one of the children who suffered most under Enji's tyranny, but seeing him so resolved over their plan, Ray could only agree with them. I see. What do you need me to do? The smiles that her sons showed her told Ray that she made the right decision. No matter what happens, she'll protect her children. She'll do everything in her power to make sure they could be happy. The weeks spent gathering information were nerve-wracking. Shouto made sure to fight more whenever Endeavor forced him to train, making sure that the man showed him his worst whenever the cameras blinked to life, capturing every moment of abuse. Whenever Shouto was down on the floor, gathering his strength as Endeavor yelled at him, the cameras would blink red. Shouto hated the color red. It reminded him of his father's flames. It was symbolic of the torment he'd undergone and is still living. But as the cameras captured everything, he couldn't help but think how beautiful the red was. With the footage captured on the cameras they'd hidden, it was time for phase 2 of their plan. With Shouto bringing the worst in Endeavor for the cameras, it was Natsu's turn to record everything that Endeavor had done in the past. Though he wasn't as bad now, Endeavor still had a lot to answer for. Gingerly picking up the camera, Natsu made his way into Toya's room. It was bare. The futon, desk, and any personal belongings had been stripped from the room, leaving it empty and too cold, even for Natsu. He could still remember nights spent with Toya, giggling and chatting as they fell asleep, as well as nights where Toya would cry into his arms, unable to find a place in their nightmare of a life. Those times were bittersweet. Now, as Natsu took in the altar, Toya was unaging the photo they'd chosen, frozen forever at the age of 13. But he looked so much younger. Adjusting the camera in his hands, Natsu pressed record. As he pointed the camera at the altar, he explained who Toya was and how he died. Natsu went into explicit detail on how Endeavor had effectively killed his eldest child and hidden his existence away, undeterred by the harm he'd caused and moving on to the youngest. Natsu spoke of a young child who just wanted to be loved by his parents, but was pushed away due to his father's greed and hunger for power. Natsu pulled a photo album off the altar and placed the camera on the altar so that it pointed at Natsu. When he was satisfied with the angle, he started flipping through the photos and speaking. "This is Toya," he began. "Toya is my..." Natsu cuts himself off, seizing the first time since the recording started. It was one thing narrating their story from behind a camera, but being in front of it, being forced to confront the fact that this was his story too. Natsu took a deep breath and continued speaking. "Was my big brother, Toya. He's the eldest of Endeavor's children, and the first to die for his ambitions." Natsu continued to explain Toya's life, the reason they were conceived, and how Shouto was not the last, not because Endeavor finally understood children were not tools, but because he was the one Endeavor had been waiting for. When he finally finished going through the photos, Natsu stood up and looked at the camera. He'd started crying in the middle of his rant. His eyes were burning as he rubbed at them to rid himself of his tears. Picking up the camera, Natsu quietly walked towards the dojo, where he knew Endeavor was training Shouto. He wanted to really hammer it in, show the world what a monster Endeavor was behind closed doors. Natsu crept towards the door and cracked it open, just a sliver, and pointed the camera at Endeavor, who was flaming as he shot fireballs at Shouto, who was panting as he dodged. Natsu let the camera film for a minute before creeping off again. Now, it was time to interview Mom. The interview with Mom was difficult for both of them. It forced his mom to acknowledge that she had failed to save Toya, and for them both to finally understand that Toya wasn't ever coming back. His mom had to recount everything that had happened to her, and had made Natsu even angrier at Endeavor. His mom had been happy and in love with another before she was whisked away to become a glorified baby maker. It was disgusting to know that such an intelligent woman was degraded to such an extent. As the interview ended, the camera turned off. Natsuo practically leaped into his mom's arms, both of them crying as grief once again took over. This video would end Endeavor. It had to. It took weeks for Natsuo and Shiro to finish editing the video. Natsuo had to call in a favor from a university friend of his who majored in visual communication. But with his help, the Todoroki brothers were finally able to complete their expose on Endeavor. Their mother had been too willing to recount everything that she had lived through, and the clips of Endeavor training, combined with the reveal of Toya, they'd hoped it would be enough. Shouto and Natsuo took major inspiration from the video exposing Katsuki Bakugo and Aldera Middle School. Shouto had even met the student who had created the original video, Izuku Midoriya, who was his classmate in UA's Class 1A. As it turned out, Midoriya was just a late bloomer, and his quirk was pushed down due to his bullies never giving him a chance to grow into his quirk. It was truly despicable what they had done. Shouto had become fast friends with Midoriya. The boy understood in a way that no one else in their class did. He understood the need to expose those who society deemed perfect, cracking open the mask that an abuser hides behind in order to show the truth to the public in a way that could not be concealed. Izuku Midoriya was an interesting person. Shouto had asked Midoriya for many tips on how to upload and make sure the video is noticed, and Midoriya told him how. As soon as they finished the video, it became a waiting game. It was all timing now. They needed to post the video in a moment that would catch attention. Midoriya had posted his own on the same day as the UA entrance exam, garnering the attention of those who were waiting for any news on UA. For Endeavor's video, they would need to wait. Shouto finally posted the video at the planned time, right after UA's sports festival. He knew attention would be on him after his showing during the festival, so this was the time the video would have the most impact. Natsu and Shouto held their breaths as the video was uploaded. A green tick appeared next to their video. Video has been uploaded. Now, they wait. It didn't even take a day for the video to make the top spot for every news station in light of the horror of Aldera Middle School and subsequently the main bully Bakugo's abuse of other students and the abuse of Endeavor's children by Endeavor himself was all anyone that would talk about. Whilst some of his fans argued his innocence, the majority wanted him trialed immediately. The uploaders were Shouto Todoroki, Natsu Todoroki, two of his three living children. A quick search revealed that at one point, Toya Todoroki did exist and had died years ago due to a tragic quirk accident on Sekoto Peak. And as Endeavor had reported, at the time, it was a clear-cut case, the boy's quirk incompatibility being public knowledge. But now, the police reopened the case, spurred on by the public's anger and their own righteous fury at being tricked in the past. Spearheading the case was Naomasa Tsukashi, who had also led the case against Aldera and Bakugo all those months ago. The media was all but foaming at the mouth, interviewing fans and heroes alike for their stance on the situation. Some heroes, like Fat Gum and Mirko, refused to get involved, but others, like Hawks, were disbelieving at the situation. Hawks was Endeavor's #1 supporter in this incident. This must be a mistake, he'd cry as the reporters interviewed him. In his mind, there was no way the man who'd rescued him from his own abuser would be abusive himself, right? It was well known that Hawks looked up to Endeavor, so every time he would say something in the Flame Hero's defense, he would be met with looks of pity or patronizing gazes, like he was a child in a messy divorce proceeding. UA had taken custody of Shouto Todoroki immediately after the video went viral, using its autonomy from the HPSC and rules to enforce a dorm to protect the students. No one knew how the court proceedings would go, or how Endeavor would be charged, if he was charged at all, but everyone knew that his career would never be the same after this. Whenever he went out for patrol, he would be met with disgusting glares. Mothers would shield their children from him, and fathers would look at him with anger in their eyes. Murderer, they said. Wife beater. Child abuser. Villain. These were all names they called Endeavor. No longer was he the shining hero. He'd be lucky to stay in the top 20 after the fallout. No matter how the trial went, the public's impression of him was forever changed. The glares he leveled at villains were burned into their minds as they watched the video. Endeavor, a hero, standing over his teenage son who was crying on the ground. The hero Endeavor thought that he'd be taken down in a blaze of glory, killed on duty, fighting villains. But Endeavor was killed by something else. No quirk was used and no violence dealt against him. Just the quirkless efforts of his two youngest and the helpful hand of his eldest, who spread rumors and hired hackers to make sure the video went viral. Davi wanted to kill Endeavor, extinguishing his flames with his own and bathe him in blue heat. But this was more fitting. Rather than have Endeavor die a hero, a martyr for the people, he'd never be immortalized as a hero now. Even if Shouto became #1, like the old man had wanted, his name would never be tied to Endeavor's. Shouto was now free from Endeavor's shadow, and Endeavor was falling into the grasp of the vultures. How perfect that Endeavor was taken down by someone not using a quirk. After all, power comes in many forms. He'd just forgotten the power of the people. And that's the end of this one shot written by I Love Myths 2003. Check them out, link in the description and everything. And yeah, really check them out and really check out whatever author that I decide to ask for permission to podfic their work. They're really great. Also, sorry for if there's any change in quality or anything. I do not have a mic, so the audio quality might be very bad, but who knows. And like and subscribe if you liked it, and get notified for future videos if I actually do anything. And bye!